Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. My name is Stephanie Don. I work for Ipsos. And today we're going to take you through a recent study that we did with RBFF to identify new anglers and boaters and share with you the information we found and what this means for your business. Some of the topics we're going to cover today, we'll do some quick introductions of myself. We also have some consumers on the line to help kind of bring some of these findings to life. We'll cover who the new anglers and boaters are, aspects of their participation, barriers that they've encountered, and barriers that they, will become, challenges for them in the future, commitment to the activities, and then engagement and how can you engage with these consumers. So like I said, my name is Stephanie Don. I'm a senior account manager with Ipsos. I've been with Ipsos a little over 6 years, and I focus primarily on foundational research like this to help clients garner understandings of a marketplace or a certain type of consumer or brand. And Ipsos is an independent research company. We have global reach. We conduct research with clients of all shapes and sizes, and we've been partnering with RBFF now for about 2 years in conducting research for them. I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Andrea, who's also on the line. Andrea?
Hi, Steph. I'm
Hi.
here. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I am going to be, during the middle of the presentation, asking some questions of some consumers. So some real live fishing and boating people are on joining us, and we'll kind of add some color commentary. And we have Paul, another Paul, so Paul M and Paul L, and Evelyn's on, and then Jen is on as well. So they will be able to kind of give some comments about the information that Stephanie's going to share, and we'll provide some answers to some of your key questions. So, and we thank them so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you. All right, so I'm going to start
Paul,
off with
you can turn your webcam off.
Thank you.
It's okay.
I'm going to start
Thank you.
off with some of the research that we did conduct. So we did quantitative research that fielded around the end of September, and we essentially spoke to over 1,000 people, 600 plus who were newcomers. So those are newer reactivated anglers or boaters. We covered topics of engagement, motivation, barriers, trip context, all types of shopping habits. And within the context of these findings, we did consider behaviors in the context of forming habits, because a lot of the situational factors that drove participation this year were due to the pandemic, due to a lot of things that may not necessarily be as influential in the future. So we did take that sort of a lens to the data as well. Then we followed up with Community Illumination, which was a short-term online community, which is sequential discussion boards among some of the same new boaters and anglers that we contacted in the quant research. These findings are peppered in throughout, but they really help to illuminate and highlight the learnings around gear and equipment and just how people felt about participation. So first, we're going to focus on who are the new anglers and the new boaters. Taking a step back, we did conduct some previous research in 2018 and 19 to identify what types of people offer the best growth for RBFF. Of those, we identified 3 consumer segments. So we have avid adventurists, active social families, and family-focused relaxers. And this information is important because it helps us identify the behaviors and the motivations for certain cohorts and groups of consumers that represent the best growth for RBFF in terms of their enjoyment and interest in boating and fishing. And from those findings, we identified that active social families really are the best growth target. So of the new anglers and the reactivated anglers, the new boaters and the reactivated boaters, a large portion of them are active social families. And we'll get into what makes them active social family segment consumers, what motivations help unify them. But first, I want to take a step and talk about their demographics. So all new anglers and new boaters, we do see a skew in Hispanics. So that means that there's a larger proportion of Hispanic new anglers than there are total Hispanics. So we have about 15% for both. Both of these new groups also have kids in the household. So a lot of young families have begun participating in fishing and boating. We do see increased participation from the Northeast. So, while the South does still demand or command the largest proportion of anglers and boaters, the Northeast had a spike in participation. And finally, we also saw a spike in participation from people in urban areas. The other really interesting insight that we found is that females tended to be more likely to be reactivated or boaters or anglers, which suggests that females were more likely to lapse in the sport. So thinking about this, just keep in mind ways to increasingly target and talk to these consumers, young families, people in urban areas, thinking about the different dynamics that impact where they live and their ability to boat and fish. And also make sure we think about children. So kids today are the anglers and the boaters of the future. So just keeping in mind that a lot of these new participants will be considering their kids in all of their decision making. So why did consumers why do they fish? Why do they fish and boat? A lot of their motivations, which also is what unifies them as being active social families, is that they find the participation in these activities to be relaxing and peaceful. The other really important aspect is that they consider them great ways to create memories with their families, to bond, helps them get away from their usual routine, and it's a nice way to spend the day and spend time outdoors. So all of these top aspects are what really drive new anglers and new boaters to participate in the sports. And these are also the same things that drive participation among active social families. So that initial target group that we talked about a couple slides ago, they share a lot of the motivations. This quote on the left is a quote from some of our community research, and it just really kind of brought to light exactly why people of these new groups are boating and fishing. So it's an opportunity to make new memories, to enjoy and savor time outdoors, to slow down, to step away from screens and stress, and to make cherished memories. So it really does roll up all of these benefits into this really ideal activity. And so these are messages that began to communicate among active social families over the last year. So in terms of trying to grow the sport, RBFF did take all of these findings into consideration and share them and communicate in the hopes of targeting and communicating specifically with active social families. So these are messages that you still want to continue sharing because there is such a large proportion of new anglers and boaters that are in the active social families segment. So I'm going to take a break here and I'm going to pass it over to Andrea, and she's going to just discuss with our consumers and talk about some of these findings and how it impacted them during the last summer.
Okay, thanks, Steph. So I've talked to you a little bit about this already, but I know Paul L., do you want to talk a little bit about how you kind of got started this year with your kids fishing?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, sorry, I was on mute. So really, yeah, it's we've done a little fishing before in one of my friend's boats, but it really was never kind of like a hobby for us. It was, just once in a blue moon type thing. But obviously this year with COVID or early spring, it was something that, I felt like it was a necessary investment because the kids are literally, relying on their technology 24/7, and the same time there was nothing to do, and everything was web-based. So I kind of wanted to take a break from it and just really enjoy the outdoors and really kind of take a break from all the tech. So I think it was kind of a perfect storm of events that kind of helped me get to that point. And one of my friends who's more of a fishing boat expert, a lake that we go to, he actually helped us, and we purchased a fishing boat online, and we fish in the Illinois area. There's a small lake, Lake Carroll. So we would go with our kids on a weekly basis. Sometimes we go there, both Saturdays and Sundays. So it's something that really kind of came my way and our way is, I would say due to COVID, it's something that I
Mm-hmm.
probably would not have picked it up or to such degree if COVID was
Mm-hmm.
in the picture.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Excellent. And Jen, I know your son kind of picked it up this summer as well, right? From friends?
Yeah. So again, with COVID, my son is a gymnast, and so he's in the gym every day, but the gyms were closed. So some of his friends started encouraging him down the street, let's go. And it became like a regular thing, which I very much encouraged because it meant it wasn't in front of screens. And his new friends are really nice. So yeah, he got a lot into it. I don't know what else. He started his social media started heading that way, and he started looking online and finding all these different fishermen, especially young ones, and started wanting to buy their gear.
Yeah, I know you and I talked about it, and we'll touch on some of that later in the discussion. So it's really, really interesting, though, how it's kind of ignited some of these the passions of the younger kids.
Yeah.
Back to you, Stephanie. I don't know how much time we want to
Sure.
make sure.
Thanks.
Yep.
And actually, Jen, that's a great point, because the other aspect of active social families that is important, and it definitely differentiates them from all of our other growth targets, is this aspect of being able to share their experiences on social media. So in terms of targeting and communications with consumers in this group, it's really important to leverage social media. That's where people are going to share what they've done, but also where they're going to get a lot of their information and a lot of their inspiration. So the next section we're going to talk about is participation. Why did consumers begin participating? What are their emotional connections? What is the adjacent activities? How does boating and fishing fit into their day? So reasons that consumers mentioned why they started boating and fishing, and we just heard a little bit of this, is first was invitations. So 50 to 60% of new or reactivated anglers and new or reactivated boaters were invited by someone else, whether it's to come on my boat, to come to my lake, to come with us fishing. So invitations and word of mouth was a large driver, and also contributed to the aspect of it being a social event. Advertisements. 1 in 4 new anglers mentioned seeing an advertisement on TV, social media, or in a magazine that encouraged them to try boating and fishing. A third of new or reactivated anglers were asked by their children to go. So whether the kids saw this in something they were reading or on their devices, or their friends were doing it, kids were a big influence in encouraging these families to start boating and fishing. Extra time. So we obviously heard a lot of things were closed this season. A lot of plans were canceled. So because of that, people had all this time to fill. When we did the qualitative data, a lot of people mentioned that they were spending more time outside because they were able to socially distance but still be social. So the feelings and the ability to be safe but also with others while you're outside during this very strange time is a benefit that not a lot of other activities can offer. So it's something that boating and fishing should definitely highlight as a way to get around kind of being isolated from others. And disconnection. We heard a lot about this, but because everything has kind of shifted to being digital, classes and learning and working from home, everything is relying so much more on technology, even more so than it has. The ability to disconnect is also a huge driver as to why consumers started boating and fishing this year. These are some quotes that I thought really illuminated a lot of these, factors. So this summer, my young children expressed interest in fishing. With everything closed, it seemed like a perfect time to try out. So just consider, again, how you can appeal to kids. They are little family influencers. We'll get into more specifics as to what this might look like, but it's everything from ensuring that there's information relevant to their age to different activities that maybe will appeal to children of different ages. Invitations. So make sure you highlight the ability to connect with others and connect with nature. So it's a really great option for people to be able to spend time with their friends and spend time with their family, but do it in a safe way. Consider tactics to ensure that boating and fishing remain top of mind as time shifts, as we look to the future and things aren't closed as much as they were in the past. We'll get a little bit more into this, but making sure that we think about ways to make sure that these activities are still top of mind and not just something that are going to fill in the gaps. And again, social distancing. So just reiterate how you can be socially connected in these times of uncertainty. So the adjacent activities is another big differentiator between who the new anglers are and who established anglers are, or established boaters, people who have been participating for years, in that a lot of other activities fit in with the fishing or boating outings. So swimming, camping, cruising around, water sports, hiking and sunbathing are all other activities that consumers mentioned doing while they were fishing or boating. This was another direct quote from a consumer. A perfect day to go fishing was when we would leave early, we would bring snacks, we're usually camping, we're just being together and having a great day. Some people who were on the boat, they were cruising, but they also brought fishing poles. They were wearing bathing suits so they could swim, they could fish. And all of these quotes and all of these consumer insights are always coupled with, it was a great day, we were enjoying each other's company. So this aspect of bonding is really forefront in all the decisions that they make. Another quote here, it could be an hour or it could be a weekend. We could be camping and fishing, or maybe we're hiking. So it really is fitting into their lives in many different ways compared to established fishers and established boaters. So here are the stats. In comparison, only 16% of new fishers were only fishing, compared to over a third of established fishers consider themselves to be just fishing when they go out. Similarly with boating, only 4% only went boating, and of those established, about 14% were only boating. So there is a significant difference in how these activities fit into the consumer's life. We're going to look at what a typical tip might look like for fishing or boating. So it starts early in the morning. People want to maximize their day. They're always talking about food, so food fits into the whole day. I'm having breakfast or picking up bagels. Get together with their squad and their friends or family. They're going to find a body of water, the ocean, the lake, the river, or a creek. I think lakes and rivers were the most common. And they're bringing a lot of stuff. So they have food for meals, they have entertainment, everyone was bringing electronics. So they are disconnecting, but they still want to have their Bluetooth going. Lots of music, bringing games, because it is a day-long or a weekend-long activity. The activities, like I said, listening to music, but also doing water sports, boating, relaxing. And all of these activities are bookended by excitement, lightheartedness, social connection, feeling joyful and happy, and just really enjoying the time that you're able to spend with everyone else. The end of the day, it's the end of your day. It's the 8-hour trip, it's the weekend trip, and for newcomers, that's more what they prefer. So instead of these kind of short trips that they have done that other established anglers might do, people are thinking about these as long day trips. So something to keep in mind moving forward as time does start to become more filled with our traditional activities is, how can you think about all the things that are important to new anglers and to new boaters, but maybe not require a full day? So it'll be things like highlighting local areas, highlighting activities that are near that you can boat and fish doing quickly, but keeping in mind that it's not always just about fishing. Okay, I'm going to pass it to Andrea to hear a little bit more from our consumers about their typical trips.
All right, yeah, definitely. And Evelyn, I know whenever, if you can go back to that slide stuff. So Evelyn, when you were talking to me about like you're buying the boat and going out with your friends, everything on this slide just kind of reminded me of that story. So can you tell the group a little bit about that, how you kind of got into your boating stuff this year? You're on mute. There you go.
You can hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, the experience I had actually, okay, for one, I can't swim. I'm just gonna go ahead and admit that. Living in South Florida, I'm surprised I can't swim, but I can't. Okay. Well, anyways, my son-in-law, he bought a boat, and that's something I always like to do is you know, ride in a boat, go for boat rides and stuff, because like we have the Jungle Queen here in South Florida. And you know, I like to ride on that. So I was like, you know, private boat. And that's when he bought the boat, and we go fishing every other weekend on the Keys. And it was quite an experience. At first, I was like, "Oh no, I'm not going to trust this. I'm trying to get off the boat." It was so funny. No, no, Mom, stay on the boat. On the boat. Once I got on it, I was like, "Okay, this is neat. This is cool. As long as you're not driving fast, you know, I'm fine with it." And we started having different couples on there. Me and my significant other and my son-in-law, my daughter, and everybody. You know, we had like 6 couples. So we started making fun by having the guys do all the fishing, and we had like a little hot plate on there, or a little grill or whatever you want to call it. And they cleaned the fish. They caught them, they cleaned it, and then we fried them. Yeah, and it was quite an experience. So now you can't keep me off of a boat. So
That's great.
yeah. Thank you. You know,
That's
something
great.
different. So hopefully one
Yeah.
day I can swim.
Yeah, and Paul M. So tell me, I know that you picked up fishing a little bit more this year. Tell me about how your kind of outdoor stuff changed this summer.
I wouldn't say it changed. We just got jet skis and boats.
Ah,
So we go to Arizona like pretty much every year. But this typical trip tip, like a photo right here, is pretty accurate. I actually do enjoy looking at it because it's very organized.
tell me more about how it's accurate for you.
It's just like, you know, start of the day, the squad, the supplies, the wear. Like all the things that are listed are pretty accurate, you know, like bring food, water,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's games, books, coolers, firearms, bug repellent, and then emotions filled with joy. Because boating's very fun. But yeah. Sorry, I got off track. I'm very focused right now
No,
on
no,
this.
it's okay. It's okay.
I almost
It's
it's like it'd be a good thing to print out to have, so you know you don't forget these things, like a checklist.
Yeah. Are there things that like are essential, like let's say you're having one of these trips and you forget something. What's something that's really
Water.
important for Good answer.
You'd be
Good
surprised
answer.
at how often people do forget water, and you're like at the river, and you're like, oh, it's only 125 degrees, and we
Yeah.
have 3 suns.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Well, we'll talk more about those, but I know that when I saw this slide and after I talked to the consumers, this is definitely on target for what's happening. So back to you, Steph.
Awesome. Thanks.
Hmm.
Okay. So the next section we're going to discuss barriers. So we're going to talk about barriers that initially prevented people from boating and fishing, and then some of the things that might prevent them from continuing, and offering up some tactics for you and how you can kind of combat these barriers. So thinking about what prevented people initially from boating was really other priorities. Whether this is your own priorities, whether it's that your kids have sports or after school activities, or your work schedule isn't as flexible or wasn't as flexible as it is now. Other priorities are the key barrier that prevented these newcomers from having boated or fished in the past. And that goes hand in hand with time. So other things take up time. I think, you know, having such flexible schedules, in addition to all the canceled activities, really opened up a lot of time for consumers to fill. Many people also didn't think they would enjoy it, which I think is really interesting because so many people said, I really liked it. I really got out there on the water. I think Evelyn was a great example of this. I realized how much I enjoyed it. So thinking about these things, how can you keep these barriers in mind in the upcoming seasons, considering how things are going to be evolving? So highlight different aspects that can directly combat time and interest. Definitely remind people that they enjoyed it. And like I said earlier, think about, people think that this is going to be a full day, and it can be a full day activity, but how can it also be, a 2-hour activity, a morning activity, an evening activity? So that will help consumers think about how the activities can still fit into their lives as it evolves past the pandemic and all of these restrictions. The other important aspects to consider are the barriers people experienced while they were boating and fishing. So the biggest one is user experience. So hurdles that are directly related to not having enough experience in boating or fishing. Things like knowing where to get the right catch fish, knowing the right equipment to buy, making sure you have everything you need, poles, hooks, lines, bait, everything. For boaters, it's getting lost or not knowing how to maneuver the boat the right way. So thinking about all of the aspects that might seem really straightforward to you, but for someone who's never really done this, are things that, are critical. Information accessibility. So ensure that information is easy to find. So not just that it's there or that it's detailed, but that it's easy to find and easy to read, and ensuring that it highlights the most important things like policies, laws, educational content, and it will save people time if they know where they can quickly access like the need to know tips. And general discomfort. So obviously these are some of the things that people will get used to, such as touching fish or, wearing a life jacket, but even things about coping with bugs or checking the weather or, knowing how to do things that maybe only someone who's experienced knows. Sharing those tips with these new folks is going to be things that help them get past some of these barriers that make their experience more enjoyable. So you can think about sharing the basic information, sharing it in an easy way to remember, an easy way to find, maybe even incorporating some aspects from experts. Do you look at the weather before you go? Do you pay attention to the wind? How can the wind impact your experience? How does the wind impact the water? All of these little things that you may not think about as a newcomer, but are really obvious or routine for someone who participates in boating or fishing regularly. So Andrea, do we have some input from the consumers on this?
Yeah. So no, I'd like to hear from some of them. So what were some things that you felt like might have been barriers as you were kind of either learning to boat or learning more about fishing? Any one of you can speak. Who wants to go first? Evelyn.
Can you hear me? It's Evelyn.
Yeah. Hi, Evelyn.
Yeah. I actually getting me over my fear. That's what you're speaking of, right?
Yeah, or just barriers. Things that you were kind of learning as you went, things that were kind of maybe frustrating as you were first kind of getting used to boating.
Well, I was frustrated actually with the water. I'm quick to get seasick, but the water that we're on was very smooth, and it let me know, okay, every day it's not going to be a bad day on on the boat. And to engage me with other things, like I said about the frying. I love to cook, and the just to laugh with family. I love family. I'm very devoted to my family. So those barriers was things I had to cross over. Okay, if I wanted to have fun and be with my family and join in as a family, then I need to get in with what they're doing.
Yeah.
So that was one of the main things.
Yeah, that makes sense. Jen, can you think of anything that were kind of barriers as your son was starting to develop this fishing thing that he's doing?
So yeah, so my husband went fishing and boating with his dad when he was young, and he kind of suggested that we do this as a family for years, and I always kind of poo-pooed it because it was just didn't sound that appealing to me. Even though we're campers, we've been like we do extensive camping vacations. We're outside all the time, but I don't know, the fishing thing I wasn't too sure about. And so then the kids also were kind of like, we'll just sit on our phone. So when my son started, we had a few things in the house that were my husband's, so he kind of grabbed those, and he messed up so much line. There were so many wrast nets of line, and my husband was pulling his hair out with, "Can you stop breaking my stuff?" But it was just practice and encouragement from his friends and watching social media and whatnot. Now he's really good. He's better than any of us. And then he was so excited that we made our last vacation kind of about him. We went to Florida. I made sure we were on a spot where he could just like go out from our camping spot and go fishing. And my husband did it with him, and they had an awesome time. We rented a boat and went out, and I had an awesome time, even though I'd been poo-pooing it for years. So his statement. But yeah, initially there was a lot of frustration, and then there was this kind of the unknown with, I don't know, is fishing kind of scary and yucky? I don't know.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. What about you, Paul L., with your getting your kids out there? What were some of the barriers or frustrations for you?
Yeah, there was a few, kind of like, yeah, I have two girls too, and I'm trying to, yeah, I was trying to get them to, clean the fish and gut it, and they weren't having it. Um, I think they're kind of more used to it, or I kind of like took over duties, but I wanted to get them involved in that process. The bugs definitely like, a big point for us. It just,
Yeah.
was like eating us alive at one point, and then just like I think they're still little, so just getting all the fish wire caught up and tangled, and just it was like a constant battle, and it was a little bit frustrating at times because they're getting annoyed, and hence I was getting annoyed by that as well a little bit. But I think
Because
we're past that a little, I hope.
because you were at the beginning, it sounds like we're playing more of like fishing guide to the
Yeah, and
yeah.
and I'm kind of I'm intermediate beginner level myself, so it's kind of like learning on the go, and trying to teach them along with it, so that haven't fished regularly in years.
Yeah. Makes total sense. Awesome. Thanks, guys. Back to you, Steph.
Thank you. All right. So, what is everyone's likelihood to continue? Are these people who have just participated once and, when everything comes back next year, it's going to fall to the bottom of their to-do list, the bottom of their consideration set? And the answer is no. Majority of new anglers and new boaters and reactivated anglers and boaters, so those who might have done it as a child or did it 10 years ago and they started up again this summer, almost everybody really enjoyed it, and really want to continue fishing and boating. And I think a lot of the reasons are that it is such a different activity from others. It's calming. It's got, you have nature. It's relaxing. You have to, kind of be patient. Some people mentioned it being a Zen-like experience. One person said, when you're boating and fishing, you're waiting and you have time with your thoughts. It lets you relax. It's also different from other activities in that there's a little bit of a challenge. So it's exciting. You're eager and you're anticipating whether or not you're going to catch a fish. If you're taking your boat out, where are you going to end up? So there's a bit of a challenge and a bit of this anticipation. It also does conjure up feelings of nostalgia. So I think Jennifer mentioned that her husband did it for a long time when he was a kid and then hadn't done it. So being able to start doing something and have it remind you of great times or memories is also something that resonated with a lot of the reactivated anglers and boaters. And it helps people form a deeper social connection. So someone said, a lot of my hobbies are independent, reading, playing video games, doing puzzles, whatever your hobbies might be. But this is something that I can do with my friends. So again, while it can be a solo activity, it really is fitting into these consumers' lives as a bonding social engagement. Thinking about future motivation, mastering the basics is kind of the core thing that is going to help consumers stay motivated. And this is true for pretty much anything. You need to build your confidence in your skills. You want to become good at something. You know, obviously there's a learning curve, but you eventually want to be successful. And so for boaters and new boaters, this is things like maneuvering and steering the right way, operations, maintenance, understanding everything about licensing and safety guidelines. And for fishing, it's learning how to cast better, learning how to set up, picking great locations, also understanding licensing and laws and policies based on whatever state you're in, whatever type of body of water you're in, whatever type of fish there are. Once you've mastered the basics, you're going to start to advance your skills. So ensuring that you're relevant on the new things, the new tactics, the new gear, looking at all the new news or the whatever is new on social media. You know, social media is definitely a place where people are able to watch others and learn through, you know, a really simple channel. Also learning from experts, building your techniques, being able to teach others, teach your friends, and encourage other people to join you. And then furthering out your goals. Maybe you'll start to participate with more people. Maybe you'll start to compete. Maybe you're going to try new things. Maybe you've mastered one type of fishing and now you want to try a different type, or you've boated in a certain area, but now you want to go somewhere else. So these are kind of the steps that consumers need to take and that you can help encourage so that they continue to participate in these sports. So again, these ambitions are really represent content marketing really well, topics you can elevate, highlighting boat safety, catching specific species, any sort of tips, and also encouraging those relationships with established or advanced anglers or boaters, and bridging connections between the established consumers and these new consumers. So when we think about commitment and investment, there are some things that these new anglers and new boaters have done already that showcase some of their commitment. So the first is licensing. About 75 to 76% of new anglers say they did purchase a license. So it does show their commitment to longevity of the sport, at least for the current season. We did learn, though, that reactivated anglers were more likely to not buy a license, and this could be due to having an active license, or maybe just thinking that they don't need one. Maybe they had never gotten caught before or questioned in the past, and now that they're back, they know they don't, you know, really get questioned. So there's a lot of education that can happen around licensing. People did also buy boats this year. Evelyn mentioned that her family member purchased a boat. 2 in 5 new boaters mentioned that they purchased a boat in 2020. The other interesting aspect about this is that over half of new boaters report being an operator versus reactivated boaters and established boaters. That percentage is about a quarter of boaters who are actual operators. So those who bought the boat really showed commitment in that they learned how to operate, they got licensed, they took their classes. They want to use the boats that they spent so much money on. And then gear. So we'll get into the specifics about gear, but over half of new anglers did purchase gear from at least a retail store or online. Many also did purchase from secondhand channels, but there was an investment, a monetary investment made in these activities. So while consumers have begun taking steps in investing, it's really important for all of the stakeholders to leverage what they know about their customers. If they've purchased a license, ensure that you keep your communication up. If they've purchased a boat or taken boat classes, you know, let them know if there are new classes around, check in with them. Retailers, you know, if you're able to tell what customers purchased what, check in with them. How are things going? Here are the new things on the market. Here are some sales. So just leverage everything you possibly can about these consumers to, you know, maintain engagement and ensure that they have what they need. All right, Andrea.
Yeah.
passing it over to you.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, so thinking about kind of the next year, we'll start with you, Evelyn, in terms of, well, you're in Florida, you could probably boat us anytime during the year, but are you motivated? Are you guys going to keep doing this, you think?
Oh yes, definitely. I'm good to go now. I wouldn't think of any other thing but doing that. But we're trying to wait kind of this pandemic and everything's like semi back to normal.
Yeah. Are there
And
other
you
things you
know,
want to do more of or learn more about or go different places?
yeah, actually, well, like I said, I always go to the Keys. That's nothing. We're always going there. And actually, I don't know, maybe find out other places like more, actually get out the boat and, learn the parties and, all kind of different events because we're always having something that's going on in my family. So maybe we'll try something different, maybe a boat, when it gets a little better,
Yeah.
party, or so, experience other things besides just taking a ride and back or fishing.
Yeah. Yeah. How
We'll see what
about
happens.
and Jen, I know your son is committed. So tell me a little bit more about things, how he's kind of learned more and kind of grown in the sport, I guess, in a short time.
So like I said, a lot of it is he's been on social media, on YouTube,
Do
and
you know
he
what he searched first? Did he just go in and like, did he know any fishermen to
no,
watch?
I don't think he knew anything. I'm not sure. I watch what he's watching, but I don't pay attention to exactly who's who and everything. But he's developed a following of particular ones, and really what I hear about is particular brands. And he tells me he has some money that he got for whatever, and he's like, I want to go to. Can you take me to Dick's? Can you take me to Cabela's? Because I really want the latest Guggen bait. Or did you see this rod and reel? I want that for my birthday. His birthday's in December. And so his whole list is about the different items that he's watched. And like I said, watching all this stuff, my husband's telling him he was losing hooks and losing lures, and we're shaking our heads. And he's like, you need to learn knots. And he starts watching these. I think he Googled on how to tie a knot, and he learns how to tie these cool knots. And now he's catching more fish than my husband, which is annoying him. Yeah. So, but he goes out to our local retention ponds with his friends. So he just does that after school whenever. But I've already booked a spring at our local like a camp recreational place about an hour from us for next spring once it gets warm again. That we'll be going and make sure we got a water spot so he can go fishing.
Okay. Okay. Paul, both Pauls, what do you think about the next year and kind of how your fishing or boating activities will be?
Hey,
Go
this
ahead,
is
Paul.
Paul L. Oh, sorry. You want to go first?
Whoever.
Okay. I guess Paul L. So I think obviously in Illinois, it's definitely seasonal for us, and I think I guess as life goes back to normal, like I feel like we're not going to be doing as much fishing as we are current state or we did when it was warmer because kids weekends are full of activities and other things, and this year was kind of like weekends are free. They have various activities, and usually we're like doing gymnastics and dance and competitions and stuff like that. So I envision that kind of falling in a way. We're still going to be doing quite a bit of fishing because it's definitely a bonding experience. But I think once things go back to normal, it's just going to free up, or not free up that time that we had, because usually like fishing trips are meant for weekends, and now those weekends are going to be filled with other activities.
Like gymnastics or soccer or whatnot, yeah. So
Yeah.
maybe thinking about, and if it's not in a week, it sounds like if it's not a weekend thing, it would end up being like an afternoon thing or something that you could, if you could access it more easily, maybe.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because I think the lake that we go to, and we usually go to the same lake, it's pretty much close to an hour drive from our house.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I would definitely look into it further as far as places more convenient for us. So, you know, I think that would definitely have something to do with
Yeah.
it. So I definitely see it continuing. I just think like, you know, the schedule has to be aligned a little bit different.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, Paul M, what are you thinking about for next your ongoing activities with boating? Are you there, Paul?
Weird, he looks unmuted.
It's okay. All right.
Okay,
We'll go
great.
on.
Thanks, everyone.
Yep.
So our final section that we're going to talk with you about is about engagement. So how can you impact retention? What type of support do consumers need? What type of information can you share with them? So thinking about how can you impact retention, it's all about creating habits. So these are the three kind of steps that are impact habit form. First, you try it. So this is where our new anglers and new boaters are right now. What we want to do is encourage repetition. How can we make boating and fishing a habit for these new consumers? And then once they're habits, those are things that they'll be doing more regularly. Habit formation is impacted by three key elements of behavior, and these are cues, barriers, and rewards. So thinking about the cues that served as the catalyst for why consumers began boating and fishing, they're going to be very different next year. Maybe not extremely different, but hopefully they'll be different. So the cues next year.
Okay.
Oh, so sorry, Paul. The cues next year are really going to be relying on the consumer-facing stakeholders. They've already started, but what can you do to remind them about what they purchased? What can you do to encourage them to do what they did this summer? Take similar trips. So the cues, that responsibility is going to rely on you. When we think about the barriers, we spent a lot of time talking about them. Behavioral barriers, barriers that are going to evolve as the world evolves post-pandemic, barriers that they happened to, experience while they were boating or fishing. So these new and emerging routines and reverting to old behaviors, experiencing the hurdles that go unaddressed are going to be what prevents them from continuing in these activities. How can you address them? And then rewards. So ensure that the rewards remain relevant and salient. So we want to encourage the similar activities that will bring them similar emotional feelings. Maybe they'll, catch their fish. It's a great way to, have a unique dinner. What are the rewards that will keep consumers coming back? So arm them with the tools to continue to grow in their, experience, continue to advance their skill set, and ensure that they remain relevant and attainable. We asked consumers who were new and reactivated boaters and fishers if they were contacted by any state agencies. So taking a look first at state fish and wildlife agencies, about 60% of new anglers were contacted about licensing. However, only 25% of reactivated anglers were contacted about licensing. And the information shared was, how can I get a license? What are the requirements? What are the benefits of buying a license and the rules? So this is something we should definitely keep up and encourage among reactivated anglers as well, because I think the data has shown us that maybe they had a license last year and nothing happened, and so they're not going to get a license next year. So something to make sure that you're diligent about and ensure it's a very easy process, something that they can access quickly, that they can, pay for online, make it simple. About a third of new anglers were contacted with educational information, and then only about 13% of reactivated anglers were. And some of the information that was shared are things like the importance of having certain documents online, what are the updated policies, fishing laws and details, contact information, and safety procedures. So we do know that a lot of these anglers are so new that maybe even the obvious isn't obvious to them. So definitely continue to contact consumers, sharing information. We'll get into exactly how they'd like to be contacted in a few slides, but ensuring that it's easy and simple for them to learn and share information will really help them. 31% of new anglers were not contacted, and 69% of reactivators anglers were not contacted at all. So just think about how you can reach out to those who you did contact with reminders or season opener kits. Think about ways to motivate consumers to participate next year. Reactivated anglers should be contacted definitely a little bit more than they have been in the past through whatever means you might have. They definitely represent a proportion of people that are active in the boating and fishing industries, and we want to make sure that they are armed with the most updated policies, the most updated laws, and that they have everything that they're supposed to have by law. And then leverage email and social media. So these are the two modes that people want to be contacted most. So keep it simple, keep it short, and ensure that it's something that they can easily digest. So the content that consumers are most eager to hear about are the different ways to fish. So new anglers, just about half, really want to understand different ways to fish. About a third need to understand the types of bait needed for certain fish, where they can go. So maybe they found one place, but they'd like to find other more convenient locations, closer locations, locations that they can turn into a trip. So really lay out for them all the different options that they have. And where to buy and rent fishing equipment is a big one that is more common among new anglers. So they really do need the basics. Interestingly, reactivated anglers, about a third of them are really keen on understanding fishing regulations. And this might suggest that if regulations are changing or if they're in new areas, that they realize they may not be the most, up to date on the regulations. So ensuring communication is just as consistent with reactivated anglers is also very important. So again, it's really about finding water access, close in proximity. Maybe it's free, all different sorts of access depending on what consumers might be, what might be important for them. Think about how you can talk about expensive costs for gear, anything that's affordable or secondhand. If there's, a marketplace for used gear, that might appeal really well to new anglers. And again, the how-to information. What can you share educational content on for fishing? What's the process to obtain a license? How can people just get started, even for those who are in this active social family segment who maybe haven't started fishing yet? So that's a bit of our broader target. So less than half of new boaters were contacted by dealerships or state boating agencies, and even fewer were contacted with information. So definitely try to up the communication with new boaters, people who just bought a boat, maybe people who just got licenses or just learned how to operate. For them, the key information that they need is obviously how to drive a boat. So especially those new boaters, whoever purchased a boat, think about if you can offer classes or tips or different types of informational sessions, sharing with them the information that they need, where they can buy information. People are also very interested in understanding the different types of boats. So maybe someone started boating with a friend or a family member, and they're interested in buying a boat. What types of boats will meet their needs? What's in their price range? Just really creating a dialogue with consumers about how to get started for their own personal enjoyment of the sport. So again, let's highlight access for where they can find boats, where they can rent boats, the types of water that they can boat in, what's close to them, what's affordable, and the how-to information. So ensuring that educational information is easily accessed and easy to understand. So we're going to talk now about the different retailers that consumers have reached out to in terms of looking for gear, looking for information. But first, I want to have you look at the bottom of the screen, and about 51% of consumers made a purchase in a retail store over the summer. 39% made a purchase online, and slightly fewer but more new than reactivated or established anglers made purchases from secondhand stores or borrowed them from friends or family members. So Amazon was a top retailer shopped at, not necessarily always making a purchase, but thinking about all of the things that Amazon offers, the broad selection, the customer reviews, those are really important to new anglers. They want to understand what's good, what's worth the money, how well do other people like it before they really invest. So thinking about all of the benefits that an Amazon can offer and having those highlighted for smaller shops, or even, a Bass Pro or Cabela's, which, might be a little intimidating to new anglers or new boaters, is really important. This person said, Amazon's my catch-all. So that's another thing for new people. They're going there, they're buying something from Amazon for another activity or for their house, and they can also just buy something on Amazon. Dick's was another popular channel, particularly among newcomers. Because of its curbside pickup, it provided a lot of safety during the pandemic. A lot of people mentioned that it was nearby. It also was attractive in terms of pricing, so it wasn't, the most expensive retailer they could go to, and a lot of times they were going there for other items. Bass Pro Shops is more likely to be shopped at among established consumers, so people who are more comfortable in shopping for gear or wanting more advanced gear. Obviously, it's known for its high quality products and its broad selection, its knowledgeable customer service, and many people did mention that it was nearby. eBay was a more common retailer or channel among newcomers as well, because it is an easy way to save money before you're sure whether or not you're going to continue in the sport. So many consumers mentioned not sure if they wanted to invest because they may not participate down the line, or their kids might not actually enjoy it. Walmart is known for its one-stop shopping. People are already there for other things. Obviously has very attractive pricing, and it's very close by, and in rural areas, it's kind of your only option. And Cabela's, again, probably a little bit intimidating to the newer consumer, but does have a very broad selection and has specialized staff, specialized products in boating and fishing. The key thing to take away from this, though, is I think that Amazon and reviews and customer service, all of those aspects are very important to consumers who are new. They want to know about the reviews. They want to have help in selecting the product. So some of these small shops people may not even know are around. Make sure that you can highlight that you're as helpful as Amazon. For some of these, bigger mass merchandising stores, like a Walmart, they're always going to win on price, but what else can you offer that will, build loyalty? Because that is something that consumers that are new don't necessarily have right away. So like we said, the physical retail, Dick's was really the go-to for safety this season. They did have a wide selection and service, but online, Amazon was really the go-to for selection and ease. In terms of what consumers did purchase, they really focused on the essentials for the newcomers. So fishing rods, reels, tackle, accessories, hooks. Some did invest in kayaks or boats, and some accessories such as fish finders or mirrors. And many people also mentioned needing proper clothing. So certain types of outdoor gear, life vests, all of the types of the clothing that you can buy, certain shoes. There were some barriers that prevented consumers from investing in wildly. So maybe they were visiting a lake and it was away from home and they didn't want to have to pack everything up and bring it home. Many wanted to try before purchase, and many were cautious, not knowing whether or not they would participate down the line. People also mentioned that it is an expensive category. And you don't necessarily want the cheapest thing. You want to make sure it works well. So that's where those reviews and that customer service is really critical. Some motivating tactics to encourage shopping are obviously sales, coupons, promotions, but also helping justify the expense, reminding consumers that, they enjoyed it, or, you purchased this, make sure you're using it. Highlighting the things that maybe seem very straightforward, but reminding them of their purchases and the excitement and the positivity. So again, new anglers were hesitant to invest. About 60% spent less than $100. However, among those who are established anglers or established boaters, majority spent over $100 in the past season. So there is evidence that once people become engaged, they are very likely to invest seasonally. One consumer said, my friends have boats and they have fishing gear and it's so expensive. I really need to make sure I absolutely am going to use it before, I drop a ton of money on this. So consider educational content that you can leverage for e-commerce websites, or you can leverage digitally. Again, consumers are glued to their phones, so making sure it's kind of at their fingertips, easy to capture. Consider gear sets. You can think about this by skill level, or by, lumping together a fishing and a camping trip. Think about how you can package up products so that consumers it's more relevant to them and they can understand how it fits into their daily routine. Provide at the shelf educational displays. Think about smart searches or content strategies online, and build relationships with new anglers. This is important a lot for brands, but also for, retailers. They do not currently have any brand loyalty. And if they do, it's probably based on friends or family recommendations. So there's a big opportunity to become that trusted source, become the trusted brand, and build the relationship so that they do feel comfortable and will keep coming back. Prized possessions. We asked consumers in our community discussions what's really prized for them. And so the most common things were their fishing rods, lures, tackle boxes, things that you may not necessarily think were, really prized or really treasured. Less common were things like pocket knives, a compass, fish finder. And the reason some of these aspects were or were not prized is really based on the sentimentality. So does it remind them of their childhood? Does it bring their kids excitement? Was it a gift? Was it something that, a relative owned first and it was passed down? Do they consider it to bring luck? Did they, is it a lucky rod that they always would catch the biggest fish with? Is it something that they've owned for a long time and is part of, their story? So thinking about all these different prized possessions, they're not necessarily based on their monetary value. It's really based more on who it came from, where it's been, what journey it's made with the consumer. So this person said, my most prized possession is my grandfather's fishing rod, Hardy brand. I use it from time to time because I don't want to get it damaged. It's not very expensive, but it's very valuable to me. Another consumer mentioned, I did splurge. I got, a rod and reel combo at Cabela's. Other people mentioned, buying really expensive accessories. And for them, it isn't sentimentality. It's really just function. So there's a clear difference in terms of what drives something feeling treasured versus there is a benefit of spending money on really premium and really great durability, but they're not necessarily the same. So we want to think about all of this information together to talk about how you can engage consumers and encourage repetition. So in terms of communications, remember to remind these newcomers of the great experiences that they had, how they were able to bond, how they were able to socially distance. Continue to reach them on the same channels that we leveraged over this past year. The active social families making up the majority of new and reactivated anglers and boaters really are heavily involved in social media and streaming sites such as Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus. Amp up the social aspect. So in any way that you can, think about how you can appeal to these consumers with a lens of making memories and bonding. Think about, event calendars or Facebook groups for locals, local gatherings, share support that's local. You can do it online or in real life when things are back to more safety and more normal. You can think about incentivizing participants to form and reinforce social bonds. So bring in someone new to the sport and maybe you can give them some sort of benefit or incentive. How can you encourage group discounts or packages? Of course, keeping safety in mind and doing that when we're allowed, but really try to communicate how these activities are really great for social bonding. From a retailer perspective, like I had said before, leverage what you know about customers, contact those who made a purchase. Think about friendly reminders, don't let your purchase go to waste, or hey, we have a new way of using this product, or this person wrote a really great review on the product. Just communicate with them in whatever way that you can. Everyone wants to hear about sales as people advance their aims and, grow their skill set. Maybe they'll want to hear about newer upgraded gear. Information. Just because they purchase something doesn't mean they know how to use it or are completely comfortable using it. Doesn't mean that there isn't room for them to improve. Think about sharing videos of experts using the products or curating content and, showing people what they can do with the products that they purchased. Share if there are lessons available or hold lessons. Highlight some accessories that might impact those user experience issues or those areas of discomfort. Maybe there are accessories that people might think aren't worth the money, and you can explain to them all the benefits that this product will give them and how it'll solve so many of these, issues that are really shouldn't, be such hurdles to participation. Small shops should really highlight your expertise and your services. So be that trusted resource, provide the reviews that, millions of people can do on a channel like Amazon, but that you can leverage from knowing the area that the store is or having personal experience fishing or boating that you can touch upon and share. From an industry perspective, definitely highlight convenient local areas. So as we know, next year, free time will likely be competing with other activities and obligations. As the vaccine is spread out, as school time goes back to normal, as work schedules maybe are less flexible, people are going to be more pressured for time. Ensure that your resources are available, top of mind, and easy to find. So if they're looking for something on your website, make sure it's easy and it's right there. Make sure that people know that they can come to your website for information. Sometimes it's taking a step back and making sure that, what you think is the natural next step is really explicitly stated for consumers. Think about training sessions, webinars, classes, techniques on fishing or boating, and include kid-friendly content. A lot of consumers said my kids asked for it, but some did mention, well, my kids are bored or my kids are too young. What is too young? How can you encourage participation for kids at all ages? How can you teach patience? How can you, help build that anticipation to catch the fish so that they don't get bored? And like we mentioned with the accessories, help improve the user experience. Maybe you can do this through sharing tips and tricks that experienced consumers or experienced anglers and boaters can share. Consider networking events. It doesn't have to be like your typical networking event for employment. Maybe it is, fishing with your friends. We had a consumer mention that her son went fishing with a cop in their local police department. And that's how he really got excited. He was able to hang out with a police officer, which he thought was really cool, and he learned something new like fishing. So think about what will appeal to these young families and these kids, and highlight the technology that can make these trips more productive, whether that's not getting lost on your boat or finding where the fish are. Okay, so this I think is our last section to hear from the consumers. So Andrea, that was a lot of slides to cover.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a lot of slides to cover for sure. So from any of the consumers, did you see anything or read anything that kind of popped up a thought in your head or a reaction from any of that? Okay, then I'm going to start with, oh, did someone else?
Well, the only thing that struck me as far as like encouraging me to continue, well, more honestly, my son and my husband, is so we're, I guess, like active outdoors family type, right? We go camping a lot and we participate in ranger programs for the national parks or state ranger programs. And so there was one, there was an angler program or something like this. But I'm at this park, I'm going to be there, I'm going to be hiking or whatever, but I'd like to encourage my kids to learn something. And when there's a ranger program about let's learn about the local animals or something like this, and make them go, and we all learn a lot. And so if there was more that was geared towards fishing or learning about fish or something like that, those kind of opportunities, I don't know where they could be sponsored from or whatever, but that would probably encourage me to like learn more and maybe have gotten started earlier too. But that's what I was thinking as you were talking. There you go.
And Jen, I'm going to go back because I know you have gone through this whole kind of purchase cycle of figuring out where and how to purchase these things. So tell me about where you first started purchasing gear for him, and then you talked about Cabela's and Dick's and all these different places. So how does that all work?
So initially, my husband had an old fishing rod that was his and his dad's that worked but hadn't been kept up and whatever, so it was functional. And my son was in Boy Scouts, and he got some like free rod and reel that was absolutely terrible. And so they tried, it was like a kid's one that didn't really do anything. So he tried that. And then he had, for a birthday, he had a gift card from Dick's. So we took him to Dick's, and there was one that was on sale. There was a rod and reel combo that was on sale for about $50, and he had about a $50 gift card. So we figured that was a good place to start because we didn't know if it was a stick. So it was that was a pretty easy entry point. And then he had little kind of small amounts of money that he wanted to go spend on lures and things and hooks and stuff like that. So he did that. And then,
he did those at Dick's?
Dick's and Meyer, because Meyer is a block from my house, and he could go over there and buy worms and hooks, stuff like that, because we have the retention ponds that he spends this afternoon.
So anyone that's listening, we're talking about the Midwest, Indiana, and it's Meyer. It's not Fred Meyer in the West, it's Meyer in the Midwest. And a retention pond in this case are retention ponds that are built when subdivisions are built on giant soybean fields or corn fields, and they're just built by the developers. It's not like a farm retention pond, just to clarify.
Right.
So
they're more landscaped.
What?
I said they're more landscaped. It's supposed to look natural and pretty. But...
Yeah, for sure. Now, and when he gets the gear or finds out about the gear from the influencers on YouTube, and this you might not know the answer, is he seeing ads from those, or is the YouTuber talking about that product?
I think the YouTubers are talking about their product, and they're very specific about, we have our new merch, or we really like this rod. And I watched a couple of the videos.
Okay.
It is very much like, we're excited about our stuff to show you, and you need to go buy it. And then he said, I want to go buy this new lure. This is great.
Yeah, and I'm gonna Now, so Paul L, with your how did you buy gear for your girls and stuff?
Yeah, I was just kind of taking it into consideration. One of my friends, he's more of an experienced fisher, and a lot of it was done online. I think we mentioned Walmart. And Walmart, in the store they have a base, but also you can order some of the products online and get shipped to your house. So that was kind of my between Walmart and eBay. Those are kind of my two main targets because it's convenient. There's more variety, and at the same time, you get delivered to your house.
Right. So was that because of COVID that you didn't want to go out as much then?
It's a couple things. It's because of COVID, and plus going into a Walmart, it didn't have as much selection as I would hope it would be. But then looking online, there was a lot more options, and it was like free delivery, so it really made sense. And yeah, COVID was a big kind of proponent into that, and so it kind of was a good fit for me. And then after, I guess, starting out on the online route, it just kind of continued. It was more convenient, and there was a lot more options.
Right. Right. And Paul M, are you there? Can I unmute maybe? Hi.
I am here.
Yeah. Did you buy your jet skis this year?
I got them like I think the tail end of last year, like 2019, because it was like
Okay.
a family thing. We got them together.
Okay.
With
So
like just a couple of them.
So now when you are buying gear or thinking about doing that, what different channels do you use?
I would say Walmart because near our river is a Walmart. Like I think there's more Walmarts by rivers than there is rivers by Walmart.
That's true. That's true. And where are you located again?
I'm located in California, right outside of LA, but I go to Arizona to do my water sports.
Okay. So you typically, so what are the types of, so the benefit, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but the benefit of Walmart is they're close by, they're everywhere. It's kind of easy to get to, correct?
It's probably like if you go into a fish and tackle, it's probably intimidating. I don't go because it's probably like stuff that's a little more expensive. Probably worth it, right? Because you're supporting small, but it's like you want a small rod. Like we're not too serious, so and it's like a river, so it's like the water's moving fast. You don't really need heavy gear. Like you're just doing it to pass the time. If that makes sense.
That totally makes sense. That's really, really interesting. So you are spending less because you are either are you afraid you might lose the equipment or
It's just like what we use light lures, light rods. They're very small, they're very light. It's like there's no the skill set and the want to do it is not there. We're just there to have fun.
hang out.
Throw
Yes.
the rod out, have an adult beverage,
Yes.
and then it's like you just hang out there until someone comes back and you go out.
Okay.
I want to do it off the jet ski, but I don't think are quite there yet.
Oh, yeah, that would be fun.
Yeah, they do make a bunch of equipment for that, but we just got to see
Cool.
where it goes next year. Excuse me.
Yeah, definitely. Sorry, Steph, is this the last slide then? Are we going into questions?
Yep, so after this, I'm going to hand it over to Rachel.
Okay. Rachel, are there questions coming in now?
Yes, we have a bunch of questions. I know there's a couple slides that the RBFF team wanted to hit on before we get into questions. Do you guys want me to go through the questions now or wait?
Are you saying me or?
We can go through RBFF slides first. Want to make sure we get those in. We do have time, but yeah. Sure, I'll pull that up.
All right, so hopefully everyone can hear me. This is Rachel Piacenza. I'm the marketing director at RBFF, and I work very closely with the Ipsos team on this research. Just wanted to thank you all for your time thus far. I know it's been close to an hour and a half, and there's a lot of information here and a lot of findings. And if you're anything like me, you're going to want to take some time to really wade through all this and really just kind of dive into the results. So our full report, now that it isn't the webinar that you guys are watching now, but the full report, everything we did with Ipsos, which is over 100 pages, is going to be available on our website right after this webinar. So there's even more information than what was presented today. But before we get to the end of this webinar, we just wanted to finish off here with some high-level recommendations and just let you know what RBFF has planned in the coming months for both consumers and stakeholders. So the first thing on this slide, engagement and retention plan. Our challenge really to everyone on this call is to create a customer engagement plan if you don't have one. If you do have one, keep it going and update it the best you can for 2021. There's potential here for millions of newcomers to be coming into the sport, and what a great opportunity to try to take advantage of these people who are, self-selecting to come into the sport, into your business, into your organization, as this is something that intrigued me in 2020. How do I keep it going for next year? Also, I think most people know on this call, but acquiring a new customer can cost up to 5 times that of retaining an existing one. So we have millions of people coming into the sport. Let's really try to keep those costs down and really keep them going and keep them invested in fishing and boating. The second one up here, education. We heard, I think, a lot on the call today and the webinar today, just getting creative on different ways to educate about fishing and boating. And I know there's obstacles and barriers with being able to have the in-person events and some of the store options, but I think just trying to see what you can do in terms of creativity. Obviously having a virtual event, everyone seems to have those these days, but I think that really offers an opportunity for customers to learn about you, learn about your company, your organization, and then even ask questions as well. Something else to think about here in that education section is, I would venture to guess most people on this call, and at least I will say this is true for me, is I was introduced to fishing and boating at a young age by a relative. That's not necessarily the case in a lot of these newcomers. A lot of these newcomers are self-taught. They're learning how to participate through YouTube videos, through other people, through friends. They're not necessarily, that tradition of fishing that we all know about is not necessarily being passed down to generation after generation. So I think that's important to kind of note here. And then finally, on that middle section is educating the whole household, right? Not just mom, not just the kids, but make it an entire family experience that the entire family can come and do again. And then the final one is this new wave of digital engagement. There's still a large number of people purchasing retail, but with the continued rise of Amazon, I think coupled with consumers' new buying habits, there's a lot of people buying online. So just a continued focus on digital properties to really drive engagement and purchases as we move into 2021. And so what is RBFF going to be doing specifically? You can count on us to be in the market next year for our Get On Board campaign, drumming up excitement for the next generation of anglers and boaters. And we're going to continue to focus on the audiences that were presented here today in the webinar. Also kind of on the docket is a retention toolkit survey. So we need everyone's help here, please. We'll be distributing a brief survey to everyone on the webinar in the coming weeks, just to see what your needs are specific to retention. We want to help the best we can, but we don't know what we don't know yet. So if you guys already have retention plans in place, great. If there's holes and opportunities for us to help fill in, that's what we want to know. And so we'll use those survey findings to create a toolkit for stakeholders. And that's kind of the final section too here on this slide is, we see a huge opportunity just to retain all these newcomers who have come into the sports. So we'll be working on a retention toolkit for state and industry stakeholders and working in partnership with NMMA and MRAA so we can keep both of the sports top of mind as we move into 2021. So we'll be in process of developing this new toolkit, but we also already have some retention resources available on our website. If you go to our site, takemefishing.org/retention toolkit, you'll see a plethora of resources we already have available. So in addition to this research, we've also had great success with our website plugin. It's an easy to embed on your website, and it allows consumers to buy a license right from the plugin, which really allows that seamless experience that a lot of customers are used to, when they're buying online from anywhere else. So the webinar today, just so everyone knows, it's been recorded and it's going to be available in the coming weeks, and we will send out a notice to everyone who's attended. And then finally, I mentioned this too, but the full research study, so outside of this webinar, is going to be available on the website following the webinar. It will be there along with some infographics we created to kind of float out some high-level findings if you don't have time to read the 100+ slides. So that is all I have. I do have a bunch of questions that I've been kind of keeping a list of throughout the webinar. So Steph, let's go back to you. We're going to ask a few specific to voting. For the qualitative discovery section, what was the total sample size, and was it the same number of participants in each of the groups?
So for this community illumination piece,
Yes.
it was about 70 to 80 participants in each discussion. It was 3 discussions. And so everybody was pretty much either a new or a reactivated angler or a new or reactivated boater. And there's a very high crossover of those who are boaters and those who are anglers. So most people were able to participate in all of the discussions. So the sample size for that is about 70 to 80 people across all of the content that we collected in the community.
And it was a pretty even split, right, in terms of boaters and anglers?
Yes, yeah. So yeah, and I think it was an even split. And like I said, most boaters were also like a new or an established angler. And then I think about a third of anglers had some participation in boating. But
Okay.
yes, about an even split of consumers who are new anglers or new boaters.
All right, staying in the boating category, what were the triggers that got newbies into the boating category this summer? And I think some of that was addressed in the webinar.
Yeah, so in terms of the motivations, people are definitely thinking about the same motivations and same benefits that they're getting from boating. So the relaxation, the peacefulness, being able to create memories with friends and families. But if we're thinking about, why did they get into this now? All of these aspects are relevant for both boating and fishing, with the exception of advertisements. That was a lot more resonating for people who are new anglers. They were more likely to see ads about fishing instead of boating. But kids did ask to go fishing. A little bit stronger for fishing, I would say. But in terms of invitations, having extra time, social distancing, and disconnection, those are all very relevant among the new boaters as well.
Okay, and we can break out the types of boats that
Yeah.
these new boaters purchased, right? That's all in the research.
It's all in the full deck.
Yep.
We had people, we provided them with images as well, just to make sure people weren't sure what kind of boat they purchased. So we did collect the type of boat, not only the boats that they purchased, but even if they didn't necessarily purchase a boat, maybe they went with their sister or their parents, what kind of boat they were on. So we have both of those levels of
Okay,
detail.
and do we also have new versus pre-owned?
I don't think we have new versus, do you mean the type of boat that they, for people who purchased a boat? We don't know if it was a new boat or a pre-owned boat, no.
Okay. One more for boating.
Sure.
And I don't know if we can answer this. I don't know if this was asked. Did some established anglers buy a boat to get places that they couldn't before?
We know that a portion of boaters specifically used the boat for transportation between land masses, but we didn't explicitly ask them if that's why they bought the boat. But that was in terms of like the adjacent activity slide. One of the other options in terms of the adjacent activities for boaters was, you know, just boating from one landmass to another landmass. So we have that percentage, but we don't know if that's what impacted their decision to buy a boat.
Okay.
Does that answer the question?
I did not make a note who asked that, but I think so.
Okay.
All right. Communication. So social media was mentioned a lot in the webinar. Is there one platform that's better for new consumers than another?
So we do have all of the platforms that new consumers, you know, all of the subgroups that we've talked about here. So the new, the reactivated, boaters, fishers, as well as current established boaters and fishers. We have all of that information in terms of what social media platforms they use in the main deck. But from what I can recall, Facebook is still very popular. I will say, just knowing from a lot of the research that we do across categories, Instagram is very big among a younger subset, which is a large portion of our new consumers. But Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, I think were the top channels.
Yeah, and I can add on to that RBFF uses those three as well.
Okay. But yeah, the percents for every subgroup is in the main deck.
Perfect. One more on motivations, the importance of catching a fish. That was not one of the top motivations, but it was on the list, correct?
So that's, you know, it's interesting. I don't think people explicitly said, I'm fishing to catch a fish. But if we think about what makes a fishing trip successful, and what might make someone continue to participate in fishing, it's that, you know, ability to catch a fish. So I wouldn't say that it's necessarily the main driver as to why people are doing it. I think the main drivers for why people have started fishing are really about getting outdoors, disconnecting, bonding. But I think in order to maintain engagement and continue the sport, they have to be successful at it. So I don't know that it's a core driver or an immediate driver, but it is something that they're going to want to start to hone their skills and be successful in doing. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
And this is specific to kind of the demographics and the sample.
Okay.
Did we specifically ask about any sort of disabilities when we surveyed people? Okay.
No, and I don't know that we can. I mean, I think that would be a question where we would allow people to opt out and not answer it if they didn't want to. I think as part of like global research, like policies.
Okay, I have one more that I've written down. And Marianne, I know this was your question, and I apologize if I get it wrong. We might have to unmute you and ask you to ask it specifically. How agencies can connect fishing with boats, for example, using a boat as a tool, but stating they are fishermen and not boaters. Fishermen are using a boat as a tool and need to know the boating rules. Did you find this type of scenario in your data?
So it sounds like people are maybe using boats and not learning everything because they are not considering themselves as a boater.
Yes.
I know there is a high crossover in terms of people who are boating and fishing. So that's definitely something that we saw in the data. I think it's more likely for someone to be a boater and a fisher though than a fisher and a boater, if that makes sense. Because you can obviously fish from land or from docks or from wherever. I don't know that we have support for people who are fishing and are less engaged and less likely to consider themselves a boater and therefore less likely to become ingrained in the policies and the laws. I will say that kayaks and canoes and those kind of single passenger boats were popular among anglers. And so there might be some educational content around the fact that those are still boats and that you still need to kind of follow the rules. I would say that's an opportunity for education. I don't know if we can exactly answer that question in the data though.
Okay. I know we have a bunch of other questions in the question feature.
Okay, I can pop it open too. I can start at the bottom. So we have one is what defines success? A fun trip or successfully catching a fish? For some people it is catching a fish, but I wouldn't say that, I kind of answered this I think before, but I wouldn't say that they have to catch a fish every time, but in order I think to keep doing it, you need to win at some point. Let's see.
Any information for smaller specialty retailers under 5 million in sales specific to engagement? I know some of the bigger ones floated to the top for the findings, but
yeah, I don't know that we collected much on smaller specialty retailers. We might have that in the full deck in terms of where did someone buy a product. Definitely is on the lower end of top of mind, and I would venture a guess that that's likely due to new participants not knowing, you know, where the smaller specialty retailers are, not knowing that there's one near them. I know that was a conversation that I had with Andrea because she is very much engaged in boating and fishing. That I think small specialty retailers really have an opportunity to highlight that we're here, we're really knowledgeable, you know, we'll help you, we'll be a partner with you. We are a trusted retailer for some of these new folks. So if, you know, if you can partner with state agencies or if you can get involved in communicating directly with these new consumers, that will be beneficial.
Yeah, Stephanie, if I could chime in, this is Frank Peterson over at
Sure.
RBF. As I read through this study a couple of times, I think there's a really, really big opportunity for small local retailers. People want to find a place close to home. They want to learn what to catch them with, what equipment to buy. Yeah, sure, they can get that through YouTube videos and by looking at reviews on Amazon. But I think the local retailer has a tremendous opportunity to connect locally, to run local clinics when those are allowed to do post-COVID, and really connect with that community. And I think you're absolutely right. These new people don't even know these smaller opportunities exist. And I think it behooves that local retailer to promote locally, market locally, get involved in the community, and really, I think, has the best opportunity to provide what these people are looking for to make them successful in the future. So big opportunity there. It may not have come across on this, but if you read between the lines what people want, it can be best served by a smaller local retailer. No disrespect to the bigger folks on the call, but that is an opportunity.
Yeah, thanks, Frank.
Well, and this is Andrea. If I can touch on that real fast too, Paul, you talked about that where you go, there are small shops and you want to kind of support small, but then you end up going to Walmart. Am I making, that's what we talked about? So tell
I
me,
wish there was small markets. There's not. It's a very small town that I go to, so it's like
okay,
I would hope maybe there is, but it's like I wouldn't know. It's
you
such a
wouldn't
small town.
know.
It's
And
like
what would
there's
be,
there's not a lot of stuff there
yeah,
if you kind of like there's not a lot of opportunity for a small shop because there's not a lot of people there for clientele.
but when you think about the idea of shop small and that whole thing, what would be the benefit for you to be able to shop like at a local independent type of retailer?
Well, I would hope to buy American rather than to buy Chinese. I think that would be the
Mm-hmm.
opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think that would be the biggest opportunity
Mm-hmm. Okay.
because when you're purchasing Walmart, you're purchasing cheaper product. You're buying Chinese product versus something that could be relatively made here or most of the parts made here.
Right. Okay. Next question, Rachel.
Yeah.
All right, we have one that I think is a little more about like fish biology and management. I think it's a really good question. I don't know if we can solve and answer this today with this research, but Matt is asking, should we manage for many small fish or few large fish? Does it matter how many fish they catch, like in terms of success? What
Mhm.
do they consider a successful outing? Because
Yeah.
yeah, so he's asking, did any of this come up in the research?
So it didn't come up. I don't think the reason it didn't come up is I think the reason it didn't come up is probably because we didn't really focus heavily on, you know, what type of fish do you want. One thing I will say is I think it will be good to have a mix. I think thinking about new anglers, they may not know enough about whether they, what are the big types of fish, but I think I think part of this is educating them, right? So, hey, you can come to this area, there's tons of fish, you'll definitely catch one. And then as they're advancing in their skills, are you up for a challenge? The catch is harder here, but you might catch a really huge fish that you can do XYZ with. So I would say I don't know that new anglers are commanding certain types of fish and certain volumes in certain places, but I think what would be helpful is for them to know what's available and where, so that they can, set themselves up for success, if that helps.
Yeah, and to add on to that stuff, I know a lot of states, and I know there's a lot of state attendees on this call, have a lot of the urban fishing programs where there's bodies of water that are stocked for success. However, you're defining success that way is catching fish. So
Yeah.
I think in terms of newbies, if that's, that's their thrill and that's what they're going to want to call success, I think marketing those opportunities to them is a great opportunity. And then for the ones that are maybe more advanced and want to catch fish, catch maybe a larger fish, putting them, and marketing to them about other bodies of water and other opportunities.
Yeah. Okay, I do see a question from Marion. It was mentioned keep angler confidence higher by focusing on the basics. I believe casting setup, locations, regulations were mentioned. Are there any other basic topics? I'm going to mention one that a consumer said to us a couple weeks ago. She didn't even know that she had to buy hooks separate from everything else. So I would say think about, the very, very basics. Here's what you need. Here's how you set it up. Here's how you use it. Here's where you can go. And when you're at this place, these are the types of fish you can catch with this type of bait. So you really, for lack of a better phrase, really dumbing it down so that, maybe if they read something that they knew, they say, they feel confident. I knew all of that. But if you could really be saving them a lot of time and a lot of stress by reminding them of some other things that they maybe didn't think of.
Steph, in terms of communication and frequency from state agencies, did consumers say they wanted to be more like regularly contacted by state agencies or specific to a certain medium? And I know we have this in the full deck, but if there's anything you can recall just to answer that on the call, I think that'd be great.
Sure. So I don't think we asked them a frequency in terms of how likely they'd want to be contacted. I know from other research, you definitely don't want to inundate consumers with a lot of emails. Obviously, during season is probably more likely to send them more information, but the key channels that they want to be contacted on were email and then social media. And then I think we also had the option for phone and text, and they should definitely be considered secondary to email and social.
Great. I'm trying to see what else here.
Yeah.
Should re-promote that.
A few comments. I'm trying to see if there's questions.
I think someone asked what was considered a new angler. So a new angler was someone who has never participated, same thing for a new boater, has never participated in the past, but has participated in the past, in this past season for the first time.
Okay, one that just came in from Pat. Were new anglers asked if they had attended an angler education event or clinic? And if so, did the knowledge they gained play a role in their decision to try fishing? So maybe not as specific to that, but did we ask anything specific to anything they knew prior that was maybe put on from an organization or a company?
We didn't collect that. I don't think we did. There might be one more thing in the main deck about, gosh, we had so much information in there. I think it was related to boating and where did you learn to operate. So I think that's really the only aspect that was as specific as this. But I'm curious if any of the consumers on the line have heard of, an education event clinic for fishing. And if they haven't heard about it, is it something that, what are the benefits that they could perceive for it? Andrea, do you have anyone in mind that might have mentioned anything like this?
Well, I know, so Jen, you mentioned it would be nice at the nature centers, but were there any specific fishing related information at any of the parks? You've been all over this summer, I know, so.
Well, not so much all over this summer, more local, which is kind of fun. Normally I'm all over. We've been to I don't know how many national parks now. I mean, there was when we went camping in Florida, and there was the Junior Ranger program had a angler, and we were going to work on that, but then they were closed because of COVID and hurricanes and that. But my son was really excited about doing that. And then I think there's some more programs at some of the Indiana state parks that I just haven't been as involved in because we've been going out of state more.
Places. Yeah. Are there key things that you feel like would be beneficial for him to learn if there were state programs? Like, is it more about types of fish or ways to fish, or I don't know.
He's been learning a lot of technique, and they've been marketing to him a lot about equipment. But I would be interested in types of fish locally. Really, that's what I was talking about with the ranger programs or the naturalist programs. Of what am I going to find here, and what is the right bait and that I need to be using, and in specific, what are the rules, and this, more about the ecology of it and what I'm going to be doing. That would be, I think, interesting to him, interesting for me, interesting for him, and more successful. When we were in Florida, we did do a fishing tour. We went with a guide, and so we brought home big fish and ate it for dinner. And it was fantastic. And so I've been telling him he needs to like learn how to catch big fish so we can have it for dinner more.
Excellent. Paul L., did you have any interaction with any educational resources and stuff for your kids?
No, I think just using friends and YouTube, those are kind of like the biggest educational resources, just guiding through fishing and trying to, and then my friend kind of showing the way, but
Yeah.
nothing kind of official.
Nothing formal. Okay.
Andrea, this is Frank Peterson again. I'd like to weigh in on this one. I think this, good question. I would think that if people knew about these angler education programs, they might want to participate because what is taught there kind of ties into what they need. I think it goes back to how we communicate to these new customers. Every state agency, if they bought a license, should have contact information, should be able to provide information relative to angler education. I just think it gets back to the way we market these programs and the lack of communication around them. One statistic, only 60% of the new anglers had been reached out with communications by a state industry. So past research we've done has shown that in normal times, we will lose 2/3 of any new angler in a given year. 2020 was not normal times, but it seems to me that we have to do a better job communicating on some of these programs that will be beneficial to what has been identified as a need in this survey. So just my 2 cents.
No, that makes total sense, Frank. Yeah, education is needed. Only 1/3 of new anglers were contacted with educational information. I mean, maybe others were and they didn't recall it, but they are really interested in, some of the basics and again, anything that you can maybe share as they become more regular fishers or more regular boaters. What would the natural progression in sharing educational content look like? I looked through the question box. It looks like we answered most of them. If anyone's question wasn't answered and they want to type it back up into the text so that it's back at the top of our to-do list, we have about 5 minutes left.
I'll go back to the top of the list. We're at the bottom, right?
Yeah, at the bottom.
All right, we'll go back to the top here.
Let's see.
Oh, there was one from Vicky I don't think we addressed on slide 11. Are the takeaways for anglers and boaters?
Let me see what slide 11 was. Oh, we kind of talked about this. Yeah, so most of them apply to all. I would say advertisements was specifically about fishing, and children were more likely to ask to go fishing. But otherwise, invitations, time, and then the benefits of social distancing and disconnecting were mentioned with regard to both. Is it less important to teach how to clean or fillet fish if anglers are fishing primarily for recreation? That was a question from Marion. I think there is definitely a portion of people who are eager to take the fish that they catch and cook it, but I think many of these new consumers particularly are doing it for the recreation. So I would say I wouldn't put all of your effort into talking about cleaning and filleting and cooking. I mean, maybe if you can package it up as let's go camping and fish and catch them and cook them, like in that sort of way, it would be very appealing. But I think a lot of the new folks are really doing it for the recreation and the social bonding and just the enjoyment.
Steph,
Yeah.
We have a question specific to, can you identify who is sending out the information to consumers. I know we specifically have focused on state fish and wildlife agencies, because of the bulk of the people on the webinar today are from state agencies, but I know we asked the consumer, who did you hear from? If you can go maybe a little bit more into detail on that line of questioning, I think that might help.
I think for anglers, I believe we asked them, did a state agency reach out to you? And if so, what did they share? I don't know that we asked other, were you contacted by other channels and what other stakeholders were they? I know for boaters, we asked about dealerships and state agencies. I could be wrong, but I don't recall it. If we do have it, though, it would definitely be towards the back of the main report, which I can try to pull up if you want.
All right, while you're pulling that up, we have a question about paddle sports, kayaks, canoes, if that was included in the boating section.
Yep, that was included. It was included as kayaks or canoes. We didn't really separate it out. Okay, final report. Let's see.
Rachel, while she's looking that up, are there any other questions?
The average age for anglers. We have all that captured in the final report.
Yes, and our report focuses on people 18 to 54. Let's see. Sorry, there's a lot of slides to look through for you guys. Information. Yeah, so we asked if new anglers had been contacted by state fish and wildlife agencies, and then what they shared and how they were contacted. And so it looks like 60% were contacted via email and 50% were contacted via social, but we didn't collect if other stakeholders or other educational sources had contacted them. And then I also have social media slide up, so let me pull to that. I know that was a specific question. So among new anglers, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram are the top, and those are used by 65 to 80% of new anglers. So 65% of new anglers use Instagram, 75% use YouTube, and 80% use Facebook. And then, less common ones are Twitter and Snapchat and TikTok. But I will say that all of those are used more by new anglers than reactivated or established anglers, so people who, have participated in the past. And the same goes for boaters. So new boaters are more likely to use, their top channels are Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Yeah, and they are actually more likely to use Twitter, but it's still not the top social channel.
Hey, Steph and company, we have to let our consumers go now.
Sure, okay.
So thank you, consumers, for giving your input. It's 3 o'clock, so let them jump off.
Yeah, thank you for joining. We'll be in touch. Thank you.
Okay, Rachel, any other questions?
I think we are good for now. Again, the deck is very large. It's 100+ pages. I hate to say, but I will say it. If you guys have any questions while you read through it in the next few weeks, feel free to reach out to me or anyone at RBFF so we can help answer those. But please also stay on the lookout for a toolkit survey coming very shortly.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you guys for joining. And yeah, as Rachel said, reach out if you have any questions. I'm more than happy to help you answer a question or work something out. So.
All right, thank you guys very much for joining. And again, there'll be a survey about today's webinar and a separate survey a bit later about helping with the retention toolkit. So thank you all very much for your time. We appreciate it.